Hello, I'm Arik Korman, Communications Director at League of Education Voters, and the parent of a sixth grade son in the public school system who needs special education services. In case you're not familiar with us, League of Education Voters is a statewide nonprofit working with families, educators, and leaders to build a brighter future for every Washington student. Our website is educationvoters.org. We believe that education is a tool for justice. One of the systems that perpetrate racial injustice experienced by communities of color is our schools. We believe every child deserves an excellent public education that provides an equal opportunity for success. In order to achieve this, we must pursue radical change in our school systems for equity, justice, and liberation. We must build schools and systems that honor the humanity in every student. Welcome to our free online webinar series, Lunchtime Webinars. We started this series 7 years ago to share information and build knowledge on important and timely issues. Today's webinar is about what students need now. These are unprecedented times in Washington State. Most school districts are still doing remote learning, and some are transitioning to hybrid learning models. But how are students navigating this historic school year? And how can we best support them now? In this webinar, we have partnered with Root of Our Youth to assemble a panel of students from across Washington to share how they are doing and how we can help. They will also answer your questions. I would like to introduce our panelists now. I am so excited to have the students here. And I'd like to start with Sydney. Sydney, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sydney. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Woodinville, and I'm from the Root of Our Youth.
Wonderful. Maham, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Maham Khan, and I'm from West Valley Junior High, from West Valley School District in Yakima. And I like taking leadership classes and doing things like this.
Great, thank you. Fia?
Hi, I'm Fia. I'm a senior at Buffalo High School. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here with the Root of Our Youth.
Great, thank you. Lily?
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm a sophomore at Southridge High School, and I'm here with Key Connection.
Great, thank you so much, Lily. I'm sure that your Wi-Fi will be a little stronger when we get to you later. Malachi.
Hi, my name is Malachi Davis. I go to University High School in Spokane, and I'm an actor, model, and singer.
Fantastic. Tara.
Hi, my name is Tara, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a junior at Bothell High School, and I'm involved with the Root of Our Youth.
Great. Zaina.
Hi, my name is Zaina. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a junior at Bethel High School, and I'm here with the Root of Our Youth.
Great. And finally, Dia.
Hi, my name is Dia. My pronouns are she, her. I am a junior at Bothell High School, and I'm here with the Root of Our Youth.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm also thrilled that after we're done with our Q&A, we're going to hear from Dr. Rowan Garnett, also known as Dr. G. And Dr. G, I'll give you a bigger introduction later, but if you could just say hi to everybody, that would be great.
Hi, everyone.
Great, thank you so much. So I've got a couple of housekeeping issues for you right now. What you're going to do is you'll see that there's a Q&A function in the bottom of your screen. This is a space for you to submit questions to us. As always, feel free to send any feedback about the webinar quality to us on the chat function or at info@educationvoters.org. Welcome, Sydney, Maham, Fia, Lily, Malachi, Tara, Zaina, and Dia. I'd like to dive into the first question, and feel free to talk to each other. If there's something that sparks you, just feel free to jump right in. But the two questions I'm going to ask is, how is school going for you right now? And how can we as adults help? So how's it going? Let's start there. And Sydney, would you mind kicking us off?
I mean, as you said earlier, we are in some very unique circumstances right now. None of us, I, for one, did not predict that my senior year would be online. But we're facing every day as it comes. I think some of the benefits are that I'm able to wake up a bit later, so I'm winding up getting more sleep than in years past. And I have the space to, get up and I can exercise a bit between classes, which helps me keep my energy in a place where it's easier to sit and focus for the time that I'm supposed to be in class. But we've also encountered some issues around privacy in camera use in classes. There's some issues with the nameplates. As you can see, some of us have changed our names to our preferred first name and our pronouns. Whereas in school, our district at least locks the plates. So you either have to change it every day or you can go and use whatever your assigned name is and no pronouns, which has been an issue for some students. Fia, I know, for example, goes by Fia instead of her full first name. Um, and I just find it nice to put my pronouns on so everyone around me knows what I go by. And it's not an issue that people have to guess or repeatedly ask.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thea, would you mind going next, since that's a great point about your name?
Yeah, it's been quite frustrating because at the beginning of the year, I was able to go into my account settings on Zoom and change my name, and it would stay for a few days. And but eventually it would reset every single day. So like Sydney said, if I wanted to have my preferred name on my nameplate, then I would have to remember every single morning to go into my Zoom settings and reset it. And oftentimes it doesn't work anyway. So I've just been kind of leaving it the way it is, which has been confusing to my teachers because my name on the roster is Fia because that's what I told them I go by. But now they're seeing Sophia on my nameplate. A few of my teachers have been really nice and they'll change my nameplate for me. So I was really grateful for that. But that has been really frustrating. And I can't imagine what it's like for trans and non-binary students having to have their dead names on their nameplates. That sounds awful, and I can't imagine what that's like. So I really wish that the district would kind of acknowledge this issue because it is an issue for many different students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Fia. Maham, I'm curious how middle school is going for you because you're in 8th grade.
Yeah, it's like in times where we are in, but it's going good. And the teachers are trying really hard to like make it as close as what if we were in school. Like they're trying to make it as close to that as possible, like giving tests and quizzes and things like that. I do wish though, like teachers would be a bit more lenient because we aren't exactly getting all the material and stuff that we would have gotten if we were in class. And but other than that, it's going good, and we're moving at a good pace, and we're getting as much help as like we need or we can ask anytime, and teachers are responding quite quickly, so it's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Dia, what about for you? How's it going?
I think a big problem for me has been that I'm taking a lot of advanced classes this year and a lot more than I was last year. So the transition into more advanced learning during a pandemic is really overwhelming. And I can't imagine what it must be like for like the freshmen at our school who just started high school during a pandemic, or even for college students or anyone who's transitioning schools in the middle of a pandemic, because there's not a lot of organization there and there's not a lot of leniency, which obviously no one's going to be organized because no one could have foreseen this situation. But I think that a lot of teachers could be a little bit more empathetic to student situations because a lot of them really are not and are expecting us to work even harder because they think we have more time on our hands because it's a pandemic, which in reality is not necessarily true. There are students who are working more jobs. There are students who are struggling with mental health. So it's not, always such an easy situation.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, Spokane, on the other side of the state, I'm wondering if the issues are similar. Malachi, what are you seeing? How is it feeling for you?
In the beginning, it was really rough because the teachers found out like a week before we actually started doing our Zooms and classes that we were going to have school. So they didn't really have their assignments together and they didn't really have like their programs altogether. But now it's getting better. And since I perform, it's easier because I don't always have to be stuck in a class. I can film an audition, go on set or something, and then come back and do school.
Yeah, and that's working out pretty well for you.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah, that's great. Zaina, what about for you?
I'm in Running Start. So if anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's just like taking college classes, even though I'm in 11th grade. And I think it's a good idea for me to do in the long run. But right now it's really hard because like my school, once you start Running Start, they're like, okay, you're out of high school. And like my contact from them just stopped. So it's really just like me trying to figure out how everything works. And for me personally, I haven't really been able to like focus that much. So I have to like get creative and like listen to music while I'm doing homework so I don't get bored. At the moment, it's the Mario Kart soundtrack. I really don't, at the moment, I'm not really feeling that much stress and anxiety towards schoolwork. Like I know something is coming due, but I'm more focused on elections and stuff. So I don't really get the type of stress that I kind of need to like start my homework. So that's been really hard for me to like manage everything. So yeah.
Yeah, my son, he's in 6th grade. He's been listening to the Mario Kart soundtrack a lot too, just to keep him motivated. Lily, what about for you? You're over in Kennewick. How are things going?
Personally, for me, I think I got really lucky when it comes to my teachers because for the majority, my teachers are all very understanding and lenient about late work and just getting through this remote learning. But some of my friends or classmates that I know, they have said that other teachers they have are not so lenient, and it's just they're all really stressed about this.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Tara, how are things going for you in Bothell?
To be honest, it's kind of been tough because it feels like students are on one page and then teachers are like on another page and then admin is in another book. Like the disconnect is so tough because we're in such like a weird time of confusion and like, is this what we're supposed to be doing? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? But like we don't have that clarity from our district. So for example, like I'm in this math class and it's really, really difficult. And I tried to switch out of it, but I had to go through like so many hoops and I had to talk to my counselor. I cried to my counselor, all of these things. And like, I was just hit with a wall. Like, sorry, you passed the deadline. Like, sucks for you, I guess. So I just would like my district to kind of be more understanding and meet us at where we're at, because we're not all having a great time over here. So
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that really rolls into our next question, which is how can we as adults help? What kinds of things would make it better? Sydney, what do you think we could do to make things better for you?
So in terms of right now, I think some of the things that adults can do that would be really helpful is understand that we are in the middle of a global pandemic. Yesterday we heard of another slaughtering of a Black person by police. So for those of us who are people of color, we're living through this time when there's a lot of racial uprising and people are really starting to understand what we've been trying to tell them for hundreds of years. We just saw the Senate confirm a justice who is very right leaning. And for those of us who identify as LGBTQ, as femme presenting, people of color again, it's a lot going on outside of school. And then we're supposed to sit on the computer. In our district, we have 80-minute periods, and our Zooms are supposed to be about 30 minutes. But I have classes that have run over the 120 minutes, or 80 minutes, excuse me, hour and 20. And After that, then we have homework that we're expected to do, and it's more homework because we have more time. I
Mhm.
mean, technically we have more gaps, but it's sort of like I need to not be online for a couple minutes before I go into my next hour and 20 minutes. So I think understanding that we're in an unprecedented time, nobody really knows what's going on. Nobody knows what can happen in 2 days. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 5 hours, to be honest. And so just understanding that we're all sitting here trying to prepare for what's next in life, which for a lot of us means leaving where we've been raised, going to college, getting jobs, entering the armed forces, just these different things that we are right now all having to consider.
Yeah, that's a lot going on. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Maham, what about for you? You're an eighth grader in middle school. What could adults do to help you?
My district, we are in a few weeks, we're starting to go into hybrid model, and they gave everybody an option like, okay, you can either choose to stay home or you can choose to go to school. And I noticed that like one of my classes in science, we she's saving all of the class labs and things like that, and till when kids come back. And the thing is, class labs are one of those like tactile hands-on learning experiences, and there are kids who are hands-on learners, visual learners, and auditory learners, and everybody learns different. And so saving one of those till kids come back is, I guess, a little unfair because there are kids who aren't going to go back. And I asked her about that, and she said that those kids would either have to watch video, like a YouTube video, or just not get to do it at all, which is taking an essential part of their learning away. And so I guess like I know it's really hard to do that like with our situations and stuff, but there are kids who have family situations like grandparents and people with higher risks at home, and they can't come to school because of that, and so they're not being provided, I guess, with the same level of education. And so just getting this, just giving everyone equal education, trying to give everybody like the same amount as much as possible. And there's especially kids like for who are in advanced for college classes. Some teachers are like skipping units and chapters and things just because of our situations and what times we are in. And I get that, like, because it's really hard, but like it'd be really helpful if teachers like wouldn't skip units or things because those are essential. And there's some chapters are really big, and if teachers skip those or make those really really short, we're missing out on a lot of material that we could use later on in life and need later on in school.
Mhm.
And then there's also like, I guess with, I'm sorry, I'm focusing on the hybrid and stuff. And there's one thing like they need to understand the risks and benefits. Like one asymptomatic kid could come and they could spread COVID to a ton of people because they don't have fever or anything, and so they can just walk by and no one will know they have COVID. And then when they go in, and they can spread it to so many people. And there's also, I guess, that districts and school admin need to respect like kids and teachers and family and their families' lives, and know that there's things that everybody has in their life, like appointments, and they have to go outside, and it's not we're not all at home all the time. And so I was talking to some friends and family, and they said that my district was going to offer classes for remote kids after school hours, which is like 3 to 5 p.m. And during those times, kids usually schedule things like appointments and stuff so that they can get done with school and then go. And so that really interferes with our lives and dinner and things like that. And then I also know that it's not really easy, but if teachers could keep motivating students and giving kids motivation, because it is really hard during these times, and listening to the news and with all this racial injustice and this COVID cases are rising, it's really hard. And so I guess this motivation towards everybody would be a lot really appreciated. And I guess also like keeping, for example, like being mindful of everybody's lives and giving workloads at a reasonable amount, because we don't have that much extra time. We've got other things to do, and so in life too. And while keeping us at a good pace, but like keep the workloads at a reasonable amount.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, my son has disabilities, and so I'm resonating with a lot of what you said. There's a lot to juggle right now. Fia, how do you think that adults could help you in your educational journey?
Kind of branching off of a lot of what everyone just said, especially Sydney, Baham, and Dia. There is so much going on in all areas of all students' lives. Dia touched on taking more advanced courses this year. I definitely relate to that. Last year I was in 3 advanced courses. This year I'm in 5. So it's been really difficult to keep up with work. It feels like as I'm trying to finish things, more things are coming up to the point where I have just piles of late assignments that I need to do. And I think that a greater understanding of that overwhelming schedule would be from teachers would be really nice. And like Sydney was saying, there was a lot going on in the world, especially for BIPOC students, for LGBT students, for female identifying students. There's just so much happening, and there are some nights where something will happen in the news, and I just can't do homework that day. And for example, the other night when Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed to the Supreme Court, as an LGBT student, that was a really scary and just difficult thing for me. So that whole night, I just didn't do any homework. I turned on all my electronics. I just couldn't interact with it because it was so overwhelming to me. And it's hard to have to send that email to your teacher about not being able to finish an assignment or needing an extension on something. Those kinds of things are really difficult. And I've been pretty lucky that a lot of my teachers are pretty understanding. I had one really big essay that I needed to finish. And that week I was turning in my first college application. And so I couldn't finish it in time. And I talked to my teacher and he was very understanding. He gave me a few days extension. And those kinds of things I think we need to see a lot more of. Last semester, there was a ton of flexibility, and I feel like we went from one extreme to the other, where last semester there was so much flexibility that it felt like I barely did any work, yet I still got good grades. And I know a lot of people were kind of in that situation because we had A/B fail grades. Whereas this semester now, we're expected to do the same amount, if not more, in a lot of cases, work than we would in in-person school, whilst so many things are going on. And like people were saying, teachers believe that students have more time. And personally, I'm engaging in more extracurriculars. I'm engaging in more outside of school activities than I was in in-person school. And so I have much less time to be doing work. And so I think we need to find a balance between those two extremes, last semester and this semester. And then finally, just having teachers reaching out to students on a personal level. I feel like I'm really lucky in this area, and I know not a lot of students are. I have one teacher who I'm fairly close with. And for example, yesterday I stayed on Zoom with him for 10 to 15 minutes, just talking about all of the things I had to do and how overwhelmed I was. And he helped me organize. He told me how I should be organizing all my assignments and figuring out what I need to do first. And he told me, pick 3 things to do right now and make one of those things so easy that it makes the other 2 easier, because you feel more motivated after finishing something. And that actually really helped. But just having those kinds of interactions with teachers is really, really important. And it's more difficult to come by now that we're in an online learning model. And so teachers putting in effort into having those kinds of interactions with students would be amazing.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Fia. Lily, I'm curious to hear what could help you over in Kennewick. What would make learning, remote learning, whatever the situation is for you, better that adults could do?
I think, like Fia said, just teachers need to give more leniency when it comes to assignment due dates, and they need to lessen the workload, because I feel like I'm getting more work now than I would if we were in person. And there's not really a lot of options that we have to be able to get help. We can email our teachers, or we can have like our we can have a separate Zoom meeting with a teacher, but even then it doesn't really help much because it's the same person that explained the problem to the first time, explaining it again in the same way. And there's not, you can't just turn to another student and ask them for help because we're not in person. And it's really hard to do that over a Zoom meeting. So I think the best thing a teacher can do while still being online is just understanding that it's going to be harder for students and they might need a little more time to get the help that they need to complete an assignment or just understand a subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Over in Spokane, Malachi, I'm curious to hear what we as adults could do to help you.
I feel like adults can just be more supportive and just understanding. And so what I have to say is almost kind of like what Fia had like said, like with everything going on, especially for students of color, it's a lot. Like we have protest and then next thing later people are getting gassed. And then I'm like right next to Idaho, so I get to hear everything that they have to say. And then you have students talking about why your life doesn't matter and just a whole bunch of stuff going on to where it's like it's hard to even move because you're like, well, what can I do? Like it's hard. I don't want to work because yeah, there's like no point. But you have to still keep going on, you know? So I feel like adult and teachers can just be more motivating and just say, hey, it's okay. You know, if you need a break, a breather, okay, perfect. Instead of just saying, okay, get it done. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Tara, I'm curious to hear what you have to say. You are so insightful. What could help you?
I think one thing that I've been struggling with is boundaries because, you know, I work in my room, so it's like I'm working the same place that I'm supposed to be relaxing in. So I'm trying to separate work time from other time, and teachers are not helping that at all. So they're supposed to assign work on the day you have class, and then it's not supposed to be due until your next class. But my teachers are assigning work and then having it due on random days at like random times. So like turn in assignments late all the time because I can't keep it straight. And like my teachers will assign tests on weekends that are like timed, so you have to do it on the weekend. And they'll assign work that's synchronous on asynchronous days. And they're like not following any of the guidelines that our district has laid out. So one night I had to take a test that took an hour and 30 minutes. And then on that same day, I had to complete an assignment from the same class and another assignment from the same class that was due later in the week. So it's just the boundaries that teachers are crossing are just so, it feels disrespectful, honestly, because they aren't respecting our time and our mental health, and they're just expecting us just be a workhorse and just go go go. But like we have mental health that we're trying to deal with, and they're not helping at all. And another thing is that I feel like my teachers are just pretending that everything's the same. Like we're not in a pandemic, we're not facing a civil rights era. And for example, when Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed, everyone was freaking out, and like we were all just trying to figure out like what's going on, how is this going to affect us. And yesterday I was in history class, and I private messaged my teacher at the beginning of class before we like started talking. I said, hi, like, are we gonna discuss the things that just happened last night? Because we're all like really stressed and there's not a lot of good resources out there. And she responded to me and said, save that for your civics class next year. And I was like, oh, okay, so thank you for doing that. I mean, I get that some teachers don't want to talk about issues that are so polarizing, but they could have just given us some resources, because I know it's really hard to find reliable resources out there, and kids just end up listening to their parents who might not be as reliable, or looking at Twitter, and there's a lot of fake news out there. So we just need some clarity, because we live in a very confusing place. So
Mhm. Yeah, very confusing. Absolutely. I'm going to ask Zaina and then Dia what could help. And Zaina, I'll go ahead and start with you. What could we as adults do to make things easier for you?
Well, for me, it just feels like America was like a magic trick, and Corona just showed all the exposed wires and everything of like how stuff is done. It's like, oh, that's not that cool. Because since we're in school, it kind of just gets pushed on you that America, while it isn't perfect, is like really good, and we don't really have enough time to really like look at the stuff around us and be like, is that really okay, or like, should we be doing more about this? And we just don't have time. But now Corona has given us enough time to like really just look at everything and learn the stuff that we actually need to be learning, and like focusing on especially politics of like what's not going right in there, and why that shouldn't still be like allowed and everything. And I think that adults just need to be more understanding, or just like more open to like the fact that a lot of us have never really seen a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, or like we just haven't been able to realize it. So we just need like a moment to breathe. And I think while teachers forget that, like, while some people are able to balance everything and juggle what's happening out in like the world and what's happening in school, and they can still maintain good grades, there's other students that can't do that, and their grades are probably dropping like really bad right now, and there's a reason for it, but they can't really do much about it. So I think we just need like the adults to just give us a moment.
Wow. Yes. Thank you, Zaina, for that. And Dia, what can you add? What can we do as adults to help you?
Honestly, what Zaina said really resonated with me. I mean, we're kids living during a time of such insane unrest. You know, like the pandemic has really forced everyone really to reevaluate their lives and to reevaluate the institutions around us. And we're being forced to do that at a young age where we're surrounded by thousands of conflicting information sources. Like, that is so unbelievably overwhelming. The amount of media we are forced to consume and contend with and, try to make sense of is like really, it's hard to deal with. And on top of that, school is such a huge part of all of our lives. It's the biggest part of all of our lives. I mean, I would easily say that school is my life. I spend like 6 hours of class plus another like 5 hours to 8 hours doing homework. Like, that is an insane amount of my life. And again, with what Tara said, setting boundaries to that is so, so difficult. And we have teachers out here like assigning tests on like 4 p.m. on a Sunday. Like, why? Like, why are we being forced to deal with all these random things on top of everything else that is going on in the world?
Mhm. Yeah, that makes, again, perfect sense. Thank you so much, Dia. We now have about 10 minutes for questions. And I just want to say before we dive into that, Sydney, Maham, Fia, Lily, Malachi, Tara, Zaina, Dia, thank you. I mean, it's such a gift having you here and sharing your truth. That'll help me as an advocate and me as a parent support kids, not just my own, but kids around Washington State. So thank you so much for that. Our first question is about socialization. What are your feelings around socialization? Do you feel isolated, or are you able to feel connected to your classmates? How can we as schools help in this area?
I think that the digital outreach has been fairly okay at my school. We have digital clubs like Zoom meetings and stuff, which has been nice. It's been nice to have that. I actually have met new people, surprisingly, in online school, which has been nice. And I think that there's, I would say it's about subpar. I think that there should be a lot more opportunity for socially distanced in-person things. I know that it's really difficult right now, but there are safety precautions that we can take. And there has been one actually in-person event that I did go to, and honestly, it was very, very, very bad. We had our senior sunrise, and it was organized by our school's ASB, I believe, but it was non-affiliated with the school, but it definitely was affiliated, like, you know what I mean? It was Bothell High School Senior Sunrise. No matter what, if they say it's not affiliated, it still has that name attached. And it was not, they claimed that it would be socially distanced, that you have to have masks, no groups above I think it was 4 or 5 people, and there was groups of 20 students sitting all right next to each other, no masks, just absolutely nothing. And I think that there really needs to be more supervision of these kinds of things. I think that but I think that there needs to be some sort of outreach and acknowledgement of the things that have been canceled so far, and kind of replacements that are possible. I think that outside of clubs, there really hasn't been any engagement, especially from admin and teachers. ASB has done a few online things, but for the most part, it hasn't been much.
Does anyone else have anything you'd like to add? Otherwise, I can move on. Go ahead.
Like to say that it is really difficult to connect with people being online, because the only way you can really connect with another student is if you're in a breakout room together, and even then it's hard to know if the other student's even there, because I know personally for me, in the majority of my classes, most of the students will have their cameras on, and there was a couple of instances where I went into a breakout room and I tried to talk with the students to answer a question and just discuss them, and I got no reply. So I'm assuming they just had logged into the Zoom meeting and then left the computer. So that makes it really difficult to connect with other students. It's definitely not the same as it would be if we were in person.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. That makes so much sense. I have a question about counseling. I'm a high school counselor, and I'm trying to reach students and not having a lot of response. What advice do you have? I've tried scheduling Zooms through email, calendar invites, Google Voice, text message, and just feeling really defeated. But I hear you wanting staff support. What can I do?
To that person, I would say thank you. My school has done like these sort of like events where they'll have like a day where you can like schedule with your counselor. And it's sort of like, to me, it's like, if I want to get help, what happens when my, 15 minutes runs out? Are you just going to kick me out of the Zoom and move on to the next kid? Another big thing in our district, I know, is a very white district. And by our, I'm referencing to some of my other peers who are at Bothell, which is in the same district that I am. A lot of our counselors are white, and there's a really large disconnect right there. If there are also a lot of straight cis counselors, and I think that Ryan Murphy, who's one of the co-creators of Pose, which if you have not seen, you should. He has this rule, basically, he calls it his 50% rule, where he tries to make sure that all of his staff is 50% queer, trans, of color, people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, people of different experiences, people who've come from different places, things like that. And so I think possibly if you were able to, connect events with people, I don't know if your school allows it, but outside who maybe have different um, backgrounds or experiences, possibly creating an event through the counseling system to gather groups of queer students, students of color, things where it's like I might go and be able to interact with people who are experiencing similar things, especially with the political climate that we are going through right now in the US. Making sure that because I know also for me, it would be hard to go online and talk with someone I don't really know one on one, especially because for me, one on one is very uncomfortable and I prefer to be with other people. And so I think opening the event to more people would draw a bigger crowd and get you more interest.
Mm, yeah.
Also, I would like to add to that. I 100% agree with everything you said, Sydney. But in terms of like what you can do as a counselor to reach out to students specifically, make it abundantly clear that they have rights. Like, please, I know it's such a big fear for a lot of students seeking help at schools that it's going to end badly for them, that they're not going to get the privacy they need, that they're not going to get the validation they need. Because that is such a big issue. There are so many horror stories of students who sought help at school and have had terrible experiences when, they're outed to their parents or they have, you know, conditions and mental health, like basically a lack of privacy. It's really, really terrible because a lot of times kids get their privacy violated or they don't get taken seriously and they end up in situations where they might be a harm to themselves or to other students and they never get the help that they need. And so I think the biggest thing is to make it clear that like what they say is not going to hurt them. And I hope like that is the case. Like don't lie to them about it. But like make it clear that what they say is confidential. Make it clear that you respect them, that you respect their privacy and that you are there to help them because there's so much fear there and there's going to be distrust there and you have to earn that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Sophia, was there something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that as someone who has had bad experiences with mental health professionals, I've also had really poor experiences with crisis hotlines. I just wanted to say that I think that a really good idea for school counselors or schools mental health professionals is to have a communication service. It could be anonymous, but something that is not necessarily a Zoom call face-to-face or a phone call, because I know a lot of students struggle with anxiety surrounding calls, and also a lot of students aren't able to speak out loud about the things that they're going through in their households, whether they like possibly living in unsafe situations. So I think that having like a communication service that does not rely on speaking necessarily, I think that that would be really unique way to reach out to students. So that was just a thought that I just had.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We have time for 2 more questions. And the first one is about academics. Do you feel like you're making progress through your studies this year? Or does it feel like things are moving too slow, too fast? There's a lot of concern about students falling behind, in quotes, in remote learning. Obviously, you guys are at the front of the pack, but I'd be curious about any thoughts on this, or on the whole, how much progress are you making, Element? How are things going academically?
For me, I think it's really hard because you can't cover as much content online as you would in person. And at least for me and for a lot of people I know, the content that we do cover, it doesn't tend to stick as much as it would if we were in person, because you're just kind of staring at this blank screen, and it's just a teacher rambling on, but you're not really doing anything hands-on to kind of get that information to stick. So it just goes in one ear, out the other, to say. And it's really hard to get the education that we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would anyone else like to tackle this question too? Tara.
I think also a lot of like the college credit classes are taking a huge hit right now because in person they're already so fast paced and like you can get left behind so quickly. But now that we're online, it feels even faster and it feels like we're also missing a lot of things. So I know a lot of people that are considering not taking the AP test because we're not going to be prepared. Like in my English class, we've been on the same subject for like weeks and I don't think that we're going to be ready for our tests, and I'm nervous for that. And one of my classes is a CHS class, so it's college credit, but it's not on a test. It's just like the entire class is college credit, and we switched to regular because um, we didn't think that having an advanced French class online was going to work, and it wouldn't have worked. But I know a lot of kids that like had their entire high school experience planned out so they could like graduate with this much credit, go to this college and like be on this track, and this completely threw a wrench in their whole plan. So that's been really tough for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how about in middle school? Maham, would you mind talking about how it feels for you with the academics?
Yeah, I guess it depends on student. Sometimes, like, there are kids who sometimes just their mental health, like, who feels more overwhelmed and stuff. And sometimes, if you like, they're still giving tests out at my school, and if you like need to retake it or something, there's like packets that you need to do or a whole bunch of other work that you need to do so that you can make sure you have all the material. And then adding that to all the other homework that you're getting sometimes can be quite stressful just because you're trying to get that in before like retake the test before a deadline or and while also trying to get homework in before it's due. And so it can be stressful, but sometimes it all just depends on each student. And so like depending on how you are in school, like if it goes too slow, for me it's going at a right pace, but sometimes a little sometimes they are a little bit more lenient, which is great, but they give us too much time, and so then we are working on something for too long, and we'll be done like before that time, and then we still have to wait for other students, and it's difficult, but it's to like because we're ready to move on, and so we're just waiting. So I feel like it's I'm making progress, and yeah, it's good.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does anyone else want to add anything to this before I move on to our last question? Okay, great. Last question. In a time when it's easy to focus on the disappointment and the lack, I'd love to hear how remote learning has brought you joy and ease in your learning. What do you hope we can do more of from these remote times when and if in-person schooling is reinstated? Malachi, I know you mentioned that it makes it a little bit easier for you to do auditions, for example. Is that a good example of how things have gotten easier?
Yeah, and especially since my learning is kind of different because I do something called self-paced. So I don't have to join Zooms or anything. So I can just go off to Portland, let's say, and then come back and then do school. So it's not like I'm just stuck just in a class. So for my case, it is kind of different, but it's also very helpful for performing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else, would you like to share how this time has made things easier, if at all?
I definitely. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Sydney.
I definitely have found that the virtual platforms allow us to come together a lot easier because I know with the root of our youth, like I pretty much met most of these people through the online platform, and so even though like I haven't seen someone like Fia in person, we've even talked about like we have some schools that we're applying to for college that are close to each other. Like, hey, keep me updated because if we go, like we could like have someone we know like close by, and so I think the like growing relationships has been really helpful. It also allows me to connect with people in different parts of the state. For example, like this, there's people from Kennewick is hours away from where I live. Um, and so I think it's been able to bring a lot of people together in order to do a lot of organizing. Like with the rallies that we've done, we're able to get people together in a safe manner, but also still get our message out. So I think that the increase in virtual platforms and virtual events and things that we've been able to figure out how to do has been really helpful um, for our mental health, along with still just being able to have some sort of a sense of normalcy, has probably been one of the highlights for me.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fia?
The connection with different students from all different places is very unique and exciting. At the root of our youth, I think there's maybe 2 people that I've met in person, and the rest I've made so many amazing friendships, like Sydney was saying, through this being able to take advantage of the online setting. I think that it's just really inspiring to see. For example, for our virtual rallies, we were able to get over 600 people in the same place, but from all over the state and the country and even the world. And it's just been really nice to be able to bring so many people together. And things are so trivializing right now with the pandemic, with the rampant systemic racism in our nation, with the political climate, with all of these things happening. But at the end of the day, what we do have, no matter what happens, is unity and strength, and we're able to be together and be apart at the same time. And so that's been really nice.
Mm. Yeah, amen to that. Sydney, Maham, Fia, Lily, Malachi, Tara, Zaina, Dia, thank you so much for everything that you've shared, your wisdom, your insight, your truth. All of that has been absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough for that. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions and for participating in the chat. And this has been just a fantastic discussion. I'm now thrilled to present Dr. Rowan Garnett, aka Dr. G. He recently completed his PhD from the University of Washington in 2019, where he was the recipient of the Gordon C. Lee Dissertation Award. He recently founded YXM, Youth Experiencing Mentoring Consulting, and WeBe, We Bridge Belonging, based on his dissertation findings. Dr. G, the floor is yours. And you're on mute.
I appreciate you, Arik.
I appreciate you.
Hi, adults, decision makers, teachers, counselors, parents. Special shout out to my inner city, urban, suburban, rural, reservation youth. Like Arik told you, my name is Rowan Garnett. Erin Jones, an undisputed champion for youth, dubbed me Dr. G. Erin, like Fernell Miller, I'm an aspiring adult champion for youth. Adults say children are the future, but that's not often reflected in our politics and policy behavior. The youth is saying in the rally videos they've done, for their potential to be possible, it must be reflected in our presence. We, adults, know that children and teens have always known that only about 20% of what we say is how we mean. That other 80 is 80% of what and why you show how you feel. That's the total sum of human behavior. Let me be more intentional about what I mean and how I feel. The following spoken word is titled, Live Life Alive. Dear future scholars, leaders, and mentors, in my early childhood and teenage conversations with youthful prophets and our ancestors, their wisdom and courage introduced the idea of a personal purpose, how to live life alive. To be sure, a purpose is a dream or a wish that a person chooses to fulfill. This pursuit often fails, as the wiser and more courageous explained. People lose faith in their ability to fulfill their purpose as they grow older. The ancestors spoke in universal terms, explained the transformation that is relevant to everyone. Everyone understands their purpose at a young age. This is key. One's purpose requires the ability to dream and believe in one's dreams, an ability common in children and teens. So many of us see how most adults lose this ability with time. They no longer believe their dreams can become a reality. This fate is a familiar concept in books and life. Children are often understood to be idealistic and adults realistic. The young think anything is possible. Adults focus on smaller, more achievable goals. Many adults would say this is part of growing up. The young around me continue to remind me of this aspect of growing up. The adults around me continue to communicate that what is realistic is to give up on dreams, to give up on the chance to fulfill their purpose. Somehow growing up and becoming worldly has become the mysterious force that changes a person and stops them from dreaming. Have goals, but never stop dreaming, even if you must adapt. Choose courage, Rowan, is what my youngest friends have continued to tell me. Courage is the way to understand the world. Special shout out to you student, scholars, leaders, and mentors of the Root of Our Youth and the Equity Bowl. My wish is to follow you, students, scholars, leaders, and mentors, and your generation into the future. If I had a superpower, I would make it this: that the collective and indivisible youthful courage we've always witnessed never stops marching in these streets. If I had a superpower, I'd make it possible for that youthful courage to march every single day into 2021, until the House and the Senate pass bills to guarantee equity. March until Congress demonstrates all human lives matter by demonstrating that Black lives matter. I would use my superpower for your generation to stop the USA and slow the world economies. This is what I wish: that you'll remind us adults what humanity looks and sounds and feels like. For now, I'm following you, student, scholars, leaders, and mentors, and your generation into the future, doing my small part to make it better. Towards it, together, in oneness, to live life alive. That's always been my purpose, to work together with young people to inspire the hearts and minds of the next generations. and the spirits of their ancestors to touch the soul of our world. That's what the youth in the video and the rallies are fighting for. The youth marching in the streets. They're fighting for their dignity, our humanity. They simply want us to be better, fairer to the past, so that the future will be better too. That's how I feel. I still feel what the youth in the video feels. They feel like the youth in the street feel. Her dopeness dubbed me Dr. G. Many thanks for now. Aaron, Arik, what now? Oneness.
Oneness. Thank you, Dr. G. Our next LEVinar will take place Wednesday, November 18th. We're partnering with Building Changes to explore how we can best support students experiencing homelessness during this challenging time. Soon you'll find registration information by visiting our website, educationvoters.org, clicking on events, then lunchtime LEVinars. I'll share the information on this LEVinar on our Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn social media channels, and in an email to everyone on our listserv. To join our mailing list, go to educationvoters.org/subscribe. Thank you to each of you for joining us today. If you have additional questions or comments, please send them to me, Arik, A-R-I-K, @educationvoters.org. A recording of today's presentation with closed caption capability will be available on our website, educationvoters.org, and will be sent to you in the follow-up email, which you should receive in about 24 hours. Please feel free to share the recording with your friends and colleagues. If you'd like to learn more about League of Education Voters or support our work, please visit our website, educationvoters.org. Thank you again for attending. Each one of us has the right to feel safe and valued. Together, we will fight for a world in which true educational and economic equity exists. We look forward to seeing you in future LEVinars. Sydney, Maham, Thea, Lily, Malachi, Tara, Zaina, and Dia, and Dr. G, thank you so much for today.